And that's how David Copperfield flies. Oh, hello, welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry, covering the latest news, industry issues, what to see and do, and showcasing theatrical talent, whilst always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. Hello, you lovely lot. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Now, today's guest is a writer, a director, a teacher, and probably one of the best basses in the business. He's played arenas to fringe venues in roles such as Caiaphas in Jesus Christ Superstar, Judd Fry in Oklahoma, and he's even brought the very first musical to Britain's Got Talent. Please go mad for the wonderful Mr. Pete Gallagher.
Hello. Lovely to see all these people here.
How I fit them in this tiny little two-bedroom flat in Wimbledon, I don't know.
What can I say?
Coming up on today's show, on the Soapbox, Pete and I will be discussing, is there more to an actor than just talking about the work they do? I'll be getting one or two of my theatrical tips out, and there'll be music from Pete Gallagher and Rob Downton's new musical Fanny Hill, as well as interviewing Pete all about his life, his career, and of course setting him the odd Show People challenge too. You're listening to the Show People podcast. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you.
Are you ready for Panto?
Oh, yes, I am.
Oh,
of
no,
course
you're
I
not.
am. Can I just say, I'm so jealous because you played that music and I thought wasn't there, an afternoon where you went through every cheesy bit of radio music you could possibly imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to choose one. So you listened for hours to stuff, all of which sounded like the theme tune to Grandstand.
Pre-production on this, before we launched, the days of my life I lost listening to royalty-free music that we could purchase. Because, of course, all of the music here is licensed and paid for, and if you would like to sponsor the show and like more cheesy music, please do get in touch. So I'm so glad to have you on here. So Pete and I have been friends for a long time. We've done shows together. Indeed, we did Winter's Tale by Howard Goodall together at the world premiere. And before we delve into the various bits and pieces of the show, I have a Show People challenge for you, Mr. Gallagher.
Oh, how exciting.
Because I know just how much you love a drama game.
Never.
So I have a copy of your CV in front of me.
Good.
Let me just lay it all out.
Yes, depending on how well edited it is, there are several pages.
There are several pages. Now, I'm going to be kind because obviously you're an extremely talented director. But of course, what I would be very interested to hear is all of your stage credits. Now, admittedly, that does mean that we have to lose off the fact that you were the drama coach on Gladiators.
I know. I like saying I was the coach on Gladiators. People crap themselves when I say that. They go, he's got hidden guns.
Coach on Gladiator. My other favourite credit I saw, before we get into it,
Yes.
was Angry Man.
Angry Man.
So angry he didn't even deserve a name from the writers.
Was that in My Hero?
That was in My Hero.
Do you know what? To this day, I've never seen the episode. I've never seen it. Although, can I tell you something? Can I tell you a little story?
This is going to be the case for this whole episode, listeners.
So we're filming My Hero. We're in a muddy park somewhere, and I have to do this little moment with Ardal O'Hanlon. And he said, "Here's a bit muddy here. I'll get some cardboard." And he just waggled his finger. I'm doing it because I know how radio operates. So I'm doing the mime. He waggled his finger, and a gentleman came over, and he said, "We have some cardboard here. Otherwise, it's going to get all a bit gloopy underfoot." And the fellow said, "Yeah, of course you can." So he went away, splattered a cardboard box, put it in front of us. After 2 or 3 takes, of course, the cardboard's now wet and mushy. He asked a second time, and he got a second layer of cardboard on. And then a couple of minutes later, he went, "Watch this. Watch this, Pete. Excuse me, could we have some more cardboard here, please? We need some more cardboard." And the guy said, "Yes, of course you can, Mr. Hanlon." And off he went. And he turned to me, genuinely, and he said, "See, I'm Ardal O'Hanlon. I can have as much fucking cardboard as I want."
For listeners who don't know who Ardal O'Hanlon is, he's probably most famous for playing Dougal in Father Ted, and I still watch that and
What a genius.
laugh. I mean, the small cow sketch is just just a work of utter genius.
Yes, indeed.
I would like you to tell me as many of your big credits that you can remember in 1 minute with suitable dramatic music. Pete Gallagher, your first Show People challenge starts now.
Do you know, I have to look these up when I tell anybody. Well, obviously, Jesus Christ Superstar, Buddy, Godspell, my favourite, Fields of Ambrosia, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I don't know any others. What else have I done? Oklahoma. I don't know. Too many. Godspell. Winter's Tale. The Fix. I don't know anymore.
You have 30 seconds.
Oh my gosh, I've forgotten more time.
If it helps, you're allowed to do other credits. And don't forget you did a certain film involving a certain priest.
Did I? I don't know what you're talking about.
That little film called Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I did a film with that. Yeah. I did a couple, in fact. Yeah, there's two films out there with me in them on that.
Think Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Oh, I did that as well. Yeah, I did the Rocky Horror Show. And I did Shock Treatment. That was good. I don't know anymore.
I think I speak on behalf of all listeners. You're shit at that game.
I am. It's the last thing in the world I would think of.
So, again, because there are endless credits here, tell me a little bit about Moonlight and Magnolias.
Oh, Moonlight and Magnolias. Oh, my God, why didn't I remember that? It is the funniest play in the world.
What's it about?
Beautiful. It's about David R. Selznick, the Hollywood producer, who, when he realised that Gone with the Wind was flopping quite so badly, which was the biggest selling book in the world at the time, and he had the film rights to it, he shut down the studios. And in 1939, he was losing, I think he was losing $10,000 a day. Now, this is in 1939.
That's enormous amount of money.
Index link that. That's how much he was losing. He called in Victor Fleming from The Wizard of Oz, which is why the black and white sections at the beginning and end are directed by King Vidor, because Victor Fleming was called into David Selznick's office. And he called in Ben Hecht, Hollywood's greatest script doctor, on a Monday morning, and he locked the door and he said, "You do not leave until we have a better script for Gone with the Wind." And Ben Hecht said, "But I haven't read the book."
Oh.
And it kicks off from there. Absolutely brilliant. He locks them in the room for 5 days, feeds them nothing but bananas and peanuts because he believes that's brain food, and doesn't let them sleep. So by the end of the show, they're all dead on their feet, trying to scratch each other's eyes out. But they have, of course, written a script. And when Victor Fleming just storms out and says, "I've had enough of this, this is shit," they go, "You can't go, we haven't got an end yet." And Fleming, of course, says, "Frankly, I couldn't give it." And he walks out.
And, of course, you've just mentioned another one of your credits you forgot. You were the Tin Man.
Oh, gosh, I was, yes. And funnily enough, I'm going for dinner with the Scarecrow tomorrow. The lovely, wonderful, and yet totally insane Jimmy Johnston. Scarecrow. He's one of those wonderful people who just goes, there are 24 hours in a day. You have to fill all of them with sheer madness. Otherwise, there's no fun to life. And good for him.
Because, of course, he did Oklahoma. And played Will Parker, and famously was asked, put on his CV that he could do lassoing, and jokes and saying, then they gave me the job and had to sort of teach himself how to lasso overnight. Like, amazing.
He told me once that his lassoing was so kind of perfect that the audience, certain members of the audience, decided it was a trick lasso. It was just a solid ring. So he used to get it wrong on purpose just to prove that the rope was floppy.
Let me see what else we can dig out, because you are well established and known for doing pantomimes with the infamous John Barrett.
I am.
And I've even heard that he's asked for you specifically on shows when it's come up from you. So what's it like having a relationship with musical theatre's most showbiz man?
He is larger than life in every sense. All the other senses that Jimmy Johnston isn't, Barrowman is. No, he's great fun.
Sorry, listeners, just so that's clear, that isn't just a penis euphemism, as it really sounds like.
Although, if you were to talk penises, you couldn't choose two better people to talk about than Barrowman and Johnson, really, could you? Yes, there you go. I have a vision of rugby posts in my head now. So, yeah, I was thrown in with Mr. Barrowman the first year. The magnificent and equally mad Paul Elliott, theatre producer, called me and just went, and I just went, yeah, I don't know what you said, but yes, because the money sounds good.
Yeah.
Did it, and it was extraordinary. It was utterly bonkers. The first year we did Birmingham, and it was at the height of the Doctor Who Captain Jack stuff. They closed roads on our last night. They closed roads. There were literally, and I'm not lying, literally thousands of people outside stage door on the last night. It was berserk. Never seen anything like it. And John was in the middle of it just going, "What's going on?" He really wasn't expecting it. But yeah, I did 8 years with John, and then he took a year off, and I was paired up with Mr. Shane Ritchie, And
very different man.
Very different. Doesn't get his willy out nearly as much. I'm not saying that's disappointing. I'm just saying it's a fact. And this will be my third year with Mr. Ritchie, and we get on like a house on fire.
Oh,
that's great.
Sam Spencer-Lane, who I've mentioned on this podcast before, a wonderful choreographer, she said to me when I was at drama school, Andrew, anybody can get a job, but not anybody can get a job twice. And what's so lovely, looking at the companies you've worked with, you just get back, you get asked back time and time and time again. And I know from directing you just what the glue that you bring to a company, just with your energy and loveliness and generosity with drinks at the bar.
I try and sleep with everybody, which makes things a lot easier. At the same time is a good trick if you can do it.
Now, that's a perfect segue for us to talk about your Fanny.
Bless you for that.
So, Pete, tell me about your Fanny.
My Fanny is gorgeous.
You've been beavering away.
Lovely. Thank you. Don't be mingy with those jokes. My dad's cousin is a rather famous adapter of bodice rippers called Andrew Davis, who works for the BBC, did Pride and Prejudice and all that sort of stuff, Tipping the Velvet, marvellous stuff he did. And he did a two-parter of Fanny Hill for the BBC. And because he's my dad's cousin, my dad hangs on to these DVDs that come free with the Daily Fib or whatever the paper's called. And it was there when I was at his apartment abroad, my dad's apartment, and it was there. And I thought, I'll give it a watch. And at the end of it, I thought, it's a cracking story, but do you know what? It's all done through diaries. It's sort of done through diaries, recollections. And if you start a 2 or 3 hour drama with a young lady going, look where I live now, but you'll never guess what a struggle I had to get here, you go, okay, so Jeopardy's gone. But whatever happens to her, she survives because you've already seen her in a plush Georgian living room going, look how well off I am now. So I decided to buy the book, which was interesting. Reading that on buses still gets odd looks, and see how the plot works without the diary element. And it is the most fantastic story of a really strong young girl who has all the 4 elements thrown in her face over and over again and somehow survives and comes out the end of it with credibility. And it's a cracking yarn. And I thought, hello, this hasn't been told like this before. And if you watch the film, it's just like terrible soft porn nonsense. And everyone who ever looked like Oliver Reed takes their clothes off at some point. It's just nonsense. So I decided to try and adapt it and make it specifically female heavy. There's no parts out there for especially middle-aged female actors. Nothing. And there are stunning middle-aged female actors out there. So the lead character is a young female, and the 3 semi-leads, as it were, are all middle-aged female. And it's a very, very female-heavy plot that has an air to it of utter naughtiness, which is much better coming from ladies. Now,
you've recently had a workshop performance of it, and I know there's also been showings of it. Just take us through the development and where it's got to at this stage.
At this stage, it is... we workshopped it last year. The wonderful Julie Atherton came in and directed for us. The Arts Council, bless their hearts, told us we were going to get lots of funding, and then it never materialised. So we cut our rehearsal schedule in half, as you do, because we had no money. And we put on something that represented the show, but the people who were there, I think everyone's now financially driven, and they were looking at a cast of 12, which we had cut it down to, and saying, it's quite a big cast, isn't it? And I just thought, I can't talk to you. If you think what we have cut it down to, the bare minimum is quite big, you want me to change my show, and I don't want to do that. So we are currently talking to 2 or 3 other producers who I would like to work with each other and put a sort of consortium together so that we can afford a cast slightly bigger than the bare minimum.
Well, rather than us just talking about it, why don't we hear a little bit? Let's have the song that you're about to hear is In a Hat Shop, which is sung by Helen Power, who we both worked with on A Winter's Tale, and is just a wonderful woman.
She's a dream.
And also very, very good. I think she's a professional masseuse now, isn't she? And
she is, yeah.
So, yeah, look up Helen Power if you've got any aching backs. Give me just a little bit of context before we play the song, In a Hat Shop.
Okay, so rather beautifully, there's a lady called Mrs. Cole who turns out to be, second half of the story, turns out to be something of a salvation for Fanny, because although she's a madam, She's a very posh madam who looks after her girls fantastically well and apparently runs a milliner's. But of course she doesn't. If you ask for something golden with a spot of blue lining, you get a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. And if you ask for it in size 17, that's the age of the girl you get, etc.
Outrageous. Well, listeners, I can hear yourself fanning yourself just at the thought. Here is In a Hat Shop, sung by Helen Power.
Evermore demure in a humble hat shop, evermore accommodation, servicing a suitor's supplication. Show them a chart or choose a la carte. In a hat shop, doubling as a tiring house. In a hat shop, dabbling in the free, where a knocking at the door means a knocking to be sure, and observers of the service all agree. On my little list I've this golden bonnet sitting there atop blue lacing, purely up to you which way it's facing. Size 17 with tufts in between. In a hat shop, doubling as a choosing room. In a hat shop, dabbling in desire. Every inch a thoroughbred as it sits upon your head, a classy cap to which a chap can but aspire. Even though the town admires my millinery, gentlemen who enter take their pick. Sizing for a hat is just preliminary. Needle in their grip, careful with the tip, squealing when they feel a little prick. Gentlemen of taste may long for darker, maybe with magenta lining. Fondle it and see the surface shining, soft on the stand but firm in your hand. In a hat shop, doubling as an import trade. In a hat shop, dabbling in bazaar. If you wish to fish or feast on exotics of the East, look no further than our worthy repertoire. Everything you want from fresh to antiquary, specify the tool is rule of thumb. Customers arrive from Rome to Canterbury, sitting on a throne, slotting in the moon. A mitre should be tighter than a drum. Looking at the range, I can see a window, possibly a hole needs filling. Lucky little opening if you're willing. Nursed as a maid, well versed in the trade. In a hat shop, dabbling as a training ground. In a hat shop, dabbling in the pure. With a classy clientele, falling for your flawless step. They will queue from here to Derry for the chance to choose in cherry such a hat that they have never tried before.
Oh, they don't make hat shops like that anymore, do they, Mr.
Gilbert and Sullivan would.
Now, before we plunge into the depths of your career, it's time to get on our soapbox.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a little bit of an unusual one. What are we going to be talking about today, Pete? What riles you?
What riles me is that my big thing about acting, performing, whatever you wish to call it, is that it is representational of humanity, of human beings, of life. And yet actors don't talk about anything other than bloody acting. They just talk about jobs, about work, about musicals, about what's coming over from Broadway, what's going to be off Broadway next year. I don't care. I don't bloody care. I've finished work, right? I've clocked off. I'm in the pub. I've got a pint in front of me. I've got a couple of friends with me. I don't want to talk about Addams Family 2, which is going to come to the Criterion Studio next August. Have you read the casting breakdown? No, I'm going to make you eat the casting breakdown because I care very little.
I mean, look, you and I have also spent, just before listeners go, oh, Andrew's got Ebenezer Scrooge on the Show People podcast. You and I have spent hours in a pub talking about the history of theatre and getting passionate about things. Are you thinking in regards to, because of course you would never deny it's okay to be passionate about something you love.
Of course.
Just clarify a little bit. Is that in regards to people only having one thing to talk about, or is it using the industry as a point of conversation?
The very people we're relying on to represent different aspects of life, many of them seem to know nothing about life. They only know about the theatre. And you talk to, especially young students, you talk to them about the passions of life and love and lust, or the dramas of having absolutely no money or absolutely no food, and they just haven't got a clue. And yet you then say, I'm looking for somebody to play, I don't know, the Artful Dodger or Nancy in Oliver. And they'll go, oh, well, what about me? And I think, okay, fair enough. You can do your research. You can find out what it's like to have no money or no food, or be so incredibly in love that you will put up with anything. But you actually don't know, because you've had all those opportunities and you've missed them because you've stayed at home and essentially you've just licked the pages of a Stanislavski book instead of going out and discovering a bit of it.
Do you think it's important that an actor experiences pain to be a good artist?
I'm not altogether sure how many good artists there are who haven't experienced pain.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think there's any out there. I read a beautiful quote yesterday. I'm probably the last in line to have ever heard this quote, but it is it Happiness Writes White?
I've not heard it.
I've never heard it before. I read it yesterday, and it's about the fact that whenever you're happy, nothing creative comes out of your body. Happiness writes white. It's just bland, or vanilla, as some people say, or as a friend of mine brilliantly puts it, bread. It's just bread, isn't it? And yeah, every time you're pained, because you don't want to be sociable, you lock yourself away. And when you're 15, 16, 17, of course, we all wrote volumes of angst poetry. I didn't, obviously. They're not listening and hoping to be discovered. We all wrote angst poetry, but that has its adult versions as well. So we then go on and write plays, or we write diaries to ourselves, or we write long rambling letters to our old school friends just to get it out, because it's therapeutic and beautiful to get it out onto paper. And you then go, there it is, there's my pain, staring back at me from a piece of paper. You never go, oh God, I'm so happy, I think I'll write it down and I'll look at it like a mirror. You don't do that. So yeah, whatever that phrase is, happiness writes white. I must find out who said it. But I think it's quite brilliant. Pain is what drives creativity.
I suppose the thing that I can think of, which does irritate me a little bit, especially if I'm out with friends, in a club or whatever, and it's when the first question is, and what do you do?
Yeah.
That's one which really upsets me, because I'm very proud of what I do, but surely you don't need to know what I do to start an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Just that simple thing of, how's your week been? Or, it's nice to meet you. My name is such and such. How do you know your friend?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you're talking to me like a normal, everyday human being.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that I encounter any sort of sycophancy, very little. But it is that thing of qualify while you're here, qualify while you're with these people. What do you do? And a lovely friend of mine, Matt Berry, who does Taste of London, always says, I'm a plumber. Because so often when people are asking that question for him, it's not that they're actually asking what he does, because everybody knows exactly what it does. It's their way of elevating themselves above to go, oh, I don't know who you are. So what do you do? And he says, I'm a plumber. And they go, no, you're not. Well, how'd you know that then? So it's always quite delicious to see that.
Absolutely. There's a great episode. I'm a huge Frasier fan, mainly because it kicks off the day really nicely at 9:00 or whatever it is. There's a great episode of that where Roz is going out with the dustman.
Right.
And she is really irritated because at every party people say to him, and what do you do? And she has to leap in and defend him. And he doesn't want to be defended.
No.
He said, I'm quite happy with what I do. Why is everyone else bothered? But I have frequently said I'm a plumber to people because they stop asking questions. And I actually just don't think what I do is any more interesting than what they do. And I really don't want to get involved in a conversation about famous people I've worked with, which is all they actually want to hear about. If they're working on that sort of surface level. And they ask you what you were in, and you say, Dr. Doolittle, there's a credit I forgot to mention, Dr. Doolittle, and they go, oh, I love Philip Schofield. And you go, oh, good. We're now going to spend 20 minutes talking about Philip Schofield. Brilliant. Brilliant. How lovely for all of us.
Do you tell the story that involves the Rocky Horror Picture Show and some tour jackets?
Oh, I love this story. So,
I love this story.
So I ended up moving somewhere. I can't remember where I moved. From one house to another, anyhow. And by this time, we'd accumulated some children, as you do along the way. And I just had too much stuff. And my then wife said the brilliant phrase to me, jackets. Let's talk about jackets. She said, right, from now on, it's one in, one out. And I went, oh, okay. Looked in my cupboard.
Sort of a UKIP policy for your wardrobe.
Yes, absolutely. Jacket fascist. That's why we separated. And I looked in my cupboard and there were just dodgy nonsense in there. And I had buddy jackets and Rocky Horror Show jackets and superstar jackets and all sorts of nonsense. And I'm never going to wear these. Why would I ever walk around the street with a jacket with my name on it going, look what I've done? I'm just not going to do it. I'm big enough anyway. Do you know what I mean? I attract attention just being. I'm certainly not going to start shouting on a jacket. So I decided to sell them. So popped them on eBay and I thought, I won't tell anybody who I am. No. I'll just say they're for sale with certificates of authenticity because, of course, I can print them up and I can sign them.
Yeah.
No one need know. Anyhow, they sold for a lovely, handsome sum. I sold them as a job lot, like 4 or 5 jackets, all inscribed with my name. I had certificates. I printed out certificates for all of them and signed them. And a chap called and said, can we meet and hand them over? Yes, I said. We met in a train station car park. I handed the jackets over, he handed the money over, and he said, I am such a huge fan of Pete Gallagher to me. And I went, oh, right. And he said, how did you get hold of them? But the punchline, of course, is that in Shock Treatment, which I did 150 years after the Rocky Horror Show, there was a chap in the audience wearing my Rocky Horror Show Eddie Dr. Scott Pete Gallagher jacket who said he'd bought it off the chap who had professed to be an enormous old friend of mine and I had given him the jacket apparently, which is brilliant.
Oh, it's such a happy story, but then it's also, if he really was such an enormous fan, I wonder if on his way back whether he just stopped the car and thought, was that? No, couldn't have been.
Well, it doesn't look at all like he looked in the OC.
Well, listeners, what do you think? Do you think that actually Pete's being a little bit cantankerous and actually people should be allowed to say whatever they want to whoever they want? Or do you think actually there is more to life than just the theatre? Please do let me know. You can tweet to me using the handle @AndrewKeats or tweet the show using @ShowPeopleUK. And you can also use the hashtag #ShowPeoplePodcast. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com or via the Show People Facebook page at facebook.com/showpeoplepodcast, where you can also find the Show People Listeners Forum. So I will post this topic in that forum. Please do check out and let's hear your comments. Now, I'm not going to put a little transition in. We're going to hear another song from Fanny Hill.
Wonderful.
Lovely title here, Sitting on a Virgin Whore.
Ah, yes.
A little bit of context, please, Mr. Gallagher.
So the context is Miss Hill arrives at the first brothel she is employed by. She doesn't realise it's a brothel at the time, and she is extremely innocent. She is taken to her room. She's showed to her room by another young lady who is under orders to explore and see what she'd be prepared to do. It is discovered she would not only be described as innocent, but utterly naive and entirely intact. Upon revealing this to the madam realises she has the holy grail of prostitutes. She has the virgin whore under her roof.
The Maidenhead,
as it were.
Which I get. My mother's from Maidenhead, and I've never travelled through Maidenhead. That's a lie. But I've never travelled through Maidenhead without a little snigger going. I know,
makes you wonder about Sevenoaks, doesn't it?
Or Cockfosters.
Indeed.
Sitting on a Virgin Whore, sung by, well, hopefully not a Virgin Whore, Lucy L. Cliff.
Oh, hold me, Phoebe. What's the matter, Mum? I'm feeling queasy. You look a bit. I think my knees will give out. Is it something I said, Mrs. B?
Me told you to come.
Oh no, what have I done?
It's all a flicker.
I'll call for a doctor.
It's fairly leaping about.
Don't pay out on me now, Mum.
What we were selling was just a man was selling our lust. But this I'm telling you will bust right off the scale. Cause this Phoebe's the only bollocking grail.
I thought you'd be chuffed.
In all my years of taking girlies in destitutes and dancing twirlies in long and straights or short and curlies indoors wills to work. I never asked for more, but it's naive. What? To believe. What? Would you Adam and then Eve? It was sitting on a virgin whore. It's something we can rake in plenty for, dealing with the cognizant for more than 10, 15 or 20 for this a once upon a lifetime chance to break that seal.
What seal? Oh, hang on.
Apple polish the appeal. We're sitting on a virgin whore. She's like an angel
So
spender.
rare.
If she could stay
So
forever,
fair.
we'd all be all together living it up for life.
She's like a pot of
So
treasure
right.
that never had the
So
pleasure. Crack the
right.
lock away and get your hands in there.
And you can like a lumpy, I'm gonna blow me trumpet. If I can sell the strumpet, that's been made. And I'm on the up, I'm off, I'm never back again. You won't see me for dust, my darling. Hold your horses, ears a blinder girl. Us two's gonna need a minder girl. Virgin Mary's not the kind of girl likely ever cross our paths again. So make her
You're a
bid.
bloody genius.
Blow that
Not to
lid.
mention devious.
Wipe your ass on 20 quid 'cause we're sitting on a virgin whore.
I've got a pile of cash for you. I've brought my special stash for you. Quite prepared to make a splash for your damsel. Oh, not so fast. I've pawned my wedding suit for you. Got my gang to contribute for you. Delving into disrepute for you. Stretched my finest attributes for you. I'm scared I'll overshoot for you one last time.
I could take your money, but here's the funny thing, it's not enough.
10.
It needs to be much more impressive.
11 guineas. Last 12.
You're gonna be tight, I bid you good night.
13. Another one.
We're getting closer, now I suppose you'll say that you can't go higher. But here's caresses that won't be repeated. Trust your trousers and don't be defeated.
20.
That's more like it,
No, 30.
Lost in admiration for you, Albert.
40.
Sure the wife will let you shame us.
50 guineas.
Going to the gentleman, going. Mr. Cross.
What a bargain.
Pulls it off.
What a darling.
What a top, what a top. You'll be sitting on a
Virgin whore. And now she's yours and for the taking. I've heard the noises you'll be making. Your old four-poster she'll be shaking to bits.
I only ate me heart all out.
But that's your
You better keep your pecker up.
I'm there to shake us all the pepper up. Sucking chickens in your thighs, you're sitting on a virgin whore. Wouldn't wanna jeopardize, you're sitting on a.
Maybe I won't recognise
You're
it.
sitting on a. Sign your name in formal lines, you're sitting on a. Virgin whore.
Not every day you listen to a podcast with a song all about a virgin whore. So, going back to your virgin days,
Bless you.
where are you from, Pete? Where did you grow up?
Well, my entire family are from the beautiful northeast town of Middlesbrough. But when I was but a speck, we moved down. My dad was asked to transfer from Iron Trades Insurance in Corporation Street in Middlesbrough. He was asked if he wanted to transfer to Iron Trades Insurance in Grosvenor Square in London. And he said, yes, thank you. So the whole family moved down south, and I grew up in a little town called Sunbury-on-Thames, which is over sort of Heathrow way. And yeah, that's it really. Went to a beautiful school, had a very normal, if that's the correct word, although I hate it, childhood. Mum was there, dad was there, older sister was there, best mate lived over the road. Everything was happy. Ended up going to drama college when I was 18. Until I was 21, and then started prancing about for a living, as my friend calls it.
And when did you first discover theatre? What was your first memory of this mad thing that we do?
That's a toughie. When I was at infant school, I think it probably says a lot about me. This I went to a Catholic junior school, every few weeks it was our class's turn to do the little play in assembly. And I always ended up playing the lead character, which was usually Jesus. It's kind of followed me around. That, Superstar, Godspell, it's all followed me around. And it never even occurred to me that I was always asked to play the lead role. Never occurred to me at all. I just went, oh, that's nice. And yet other people were very aware of it. And I found out when I must have been about 10 years old or so. Somebody moved into our street who was also at my school, and they were talking to my friends about me, about what I was like at school, because we all went to different schools apart from this other girl. And she used the phrase, always Jesus. And I thought, oh, well, I should stop talking about me now. And a bit later on, someone said, so we hear you're always Jesus in the assembly plays. It had never occurred to me that anyone would notice, because they were just assembly plays, that teacher would go, will you do this? And I'd go, yeah, of course I will. But they also used to get me to stand up and sing solo. I sang Why Do I Do It, the Peter Rabbit song with fluffy blue ears on. Yeah, they used to get me to do that. And my mum had to tell me they asked me to do this because they thought I had a nice singing voice. I thought it was because my name was the same as Peter Rabbit. So we had the same first name, so they asked me to do it, which is the way you think when you're 7 or 6 or whatever. But she said, no, it's because you've got a nice singing voice. Oh, no, really? Okay. So it sort of always happened. It was always around me. Then I went to senior school from 11 to 18, I suppose. And it was a very serious school, very posh school, very serious. And we weren't allowed to do drama if we were very, very serious. I mean, the school did, but my dad wanted me to do Latin. So that's what I did. So without realizing it, I asked the school in the 4th year and the 5th year and the lower 6th, which are now called different things, aren't they? Year, whatever they are. So I asked the school if we could have a 4th year play and a 5th year play. And in fact, when I left, on my final report, it said, which I had no idea of, it said, Pete has contributed enormously to drama in the school by setting up the this play and the that play and the other play. It just didn't even occur to me that people wouldn't do these things. I was like, there's a whole bunch of us. We want to do a play. Let's do a play. So we did. And I discovered Tom Stoppard and Charles Marovitz and all sorts of exciting people.
So it sounds to me like rather than having a role model, as it were, who was telling you these are the things you need to do, it just came extremely naturally as part of you being a kid.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I remember more than anything else. One is that Mrs. Murphy used to cast me as Jesus every month, and I never knew what that was about. And then in my senior school, I had a teacher who, please trust me, his name was Guy Fawkes.
No, that's not the case.
He was Mr. Horton Fawkes, his name was. And I remember saying to him once, did you add the Fawkes? And he said, no, I added the Horton because otherwise people would take the mick out of my name. He said, but I believe they're direct descendants, and hence there's a Guy in every generation, I believe. Yeah. Guy Horton Fawkes, he stop it now. So he would encourage me all the time, but he was a wonderful director. And I remember saying to him, please give up teaching and be a director. You're great. And he'd say, I will, as long as you promise to become a professional actor. And I thought, that's nice. And also, when I left school, the headmaster told me I was an idiot and there was no future in show business and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. He told my parents, and I think I'm pretty much quoting here, I said what I had to say to him. But actually, can you tell him that we all think he's marvellous and wish him all the luck in the world? Because I think he's fantastic, which was a really lovely thing. He knew, of course, my parents would tell me that. So he did his job by saying, no, go and become a solicitor. But then he said to my parents, I think he's made the right choice. He's a terrific actor. So that was lovely of him, I thought.
And you said, so you would go on to the Carona Academy in regards to training. I mean, obviously, drama schools have changed a lot. Indeed, you teach at tons of them. Yeah. Indeed, I know a lot of your bread and butter comes from working at the likes of the Guildford School of Acting and other places. How easy was it to fund that training at that time?
It was almost impossible. The fees were nowhere near what they are now, but Carona was about a third of what everyone else wanted. And it was the only one my parents could afford to pay for. So that's what they did. I mean, it's one thing asking for, I can't even remember what they were, £250, £300 a term. It's another thing asking for £1,100, £1,200 a term. And they said, well, we can afford to pay for that one. If you want to go to the others, you'll have to get a grant. So I just thought, well, bird in the hand. So I went to the college I could afford to go to. And like all these places, it was a small college, but that's not to say it didn't give us Dennis Waterman and Susan George and the wonderful Nicholas Lyndhurst, who was there pretty much the same time as me. All of those people went through their doors, and Judy and Sally Geeson, who were massive stars in the 60s, they all went through the doors and came out the other side, wonderful, glorious, respected TV, film, theatre actors. So it's, as with any small place, you get out what you put in. So I just put in loads and got out loads as well, and had some fantastic times there.
What were some of the best lessons you learned when you were at drama school?
Oh, my best lessons always were with a chap called Bill Hepper, who to this day is still my hero. He's gone, sadly, now. But every word that came out of his mouth was a gem. Every single word. He had a beautiful way with insults as well. He's if you'll forgive me, you might have to edit this one, but
very unlikely on this part.
If he heard giggling in the class, he'd say, "Will you stop acting like a schoolgirl having her first period and sit the fuck down?" Which I just adored. He was marvellous, but he would. It sounds dodgy, but it wasn't. He would invite a few of us. He'd say, "Come round to the flat in Barons Court. I'll tell you things." And there was nothing dodgy at all. He would just tell us things about the industry. He'd tell us what reality was. He'd tell us how to open a script and work out whether it was worth you reading the rest of the script. Tell us how to search for character clues that meant what you were being asked to do was going to be interesting. He was just a mine of information. I adored him. And he died halfway through my time there. He died, and it was never the same again. Which is a real shame, because he was my hero. I adored him. I remember him once saying to me when we were doing Guys and Dolls, and I was asked to go and work with him on a particular speech that I had to give. And he said, "I'm going to tell you something now. You've just got to believe me. There are 4 laughs in this. If you go for 5, you'll kill the 4th and you'll only get 3. You have to go for 4. Any less would be a travesty. Any more, you'll destroy the balance of the piece." And I remember thinking, wow. Because most people would just go, "How many laughs can I squeeze out of this?" But he knew if you went for too many, you'd kill the last 2, not just the last one. So I mean, he was brilliant. He taught me everything.
Well, Pete, we've been discussing your Fanny. Now it's time for me to get my tips out.
Marvellous.
That's right. Here are my December theatrical tips, and huge apologies I haven't included any pantomimes. A Christmas Carol by the Fitzrovia Radio Hour. Dickens' classic reimagined as a 1940s Christmas special. Spiffing scenes and Victorian stereotypes keep coming, despite visitations from more ghosts than the cast are expecting. Spectacular sound effects created live, cut glass accents and sharp suits combine to create a unique alternative festive entertainment. The Fitzrovia Radio Hour are an acclaimed troupe whose period charms have worked wonders on venues including Shakespeare's Globe, Wilton's Music Hall, the Royal Albert Hall and the Vaults, as well as a sellout West End season. It plays in Leicester Square from the 8th to the 30th of December 2017. For tickets and information, visit christmasinleicestersquare.com. Banana Man, the Man of Peel, is a unique member of the superhero ranks. Our handsome hero may have a jawline you can see from space and sport the snazziest of tight lycra outfits, but this superhero has the muscles of 20 men and the brain of 20 muscles, which isn't much. With supervillains Dr. Gloom and General Blight attempting world domination, who can we call? Superman's on holiday. Spider-Man's not picking up. Our only option, our very, very last option, is Banana Man. For the first time ever, Banana Man will be live on stage in Banana Man, the musical, at the Southwark Playhouse from the 15th of December to the 20th of January 2018. Visit southwarkplayhouse.com for more information and tickets. The Christmasaurus. Tom Fletcher's debut novel, The Christmasaurus, is adapted for the stage with brand new songs written by Fletcher. Fletcher, who may be best known as a singer-songwriter from bands such as Busted, McFly and McBusted, this new stage production, The Christmasaurus, forms the basis of his new musical, with songs also written by Fletcher, and tells the story of a boy called William Trundle, who on Christmas Eve travels to the North Pole to meet Santa Claus, but stumbles across a dinosaur. For more information and to book tickets, visit thechristmasaurus.com. However, it only runs for 10 performances at the Eventum Apollo from the 10th of December. Are you involved in a show that you'd like me to tell our listeners about? Well, just send me over an email to info@arian-productions.com. So, Pete, you finish your time at Carona Academy.
I do.
Where do the winds take you?
Well, I straight into work which was fantastic. It doesn't happen like this anymore, but I applied for, auditioned for, and got a job within about 5 days, I think. Pretty much New Year. Left the Carona Academy just before Christmas. New Year came, went for this job. They said, yes, can you start on Monday? And there was me in the back of a transit van doing a show called Petrushka the Puppet, which taught me all about touring TIE venues. We went to schools and hospices and all sorts of places. But the most interesting thing was day one of rehearsals, director said, right, cast, who writes songs? And of course, being the Keenie that I was, I went, I do. She went, lovely, can you have 3 by tomorrow, please? Thank you. So I went home literally thinking my job depended on it, went back with 3 songs, one of which I'd written, one of which I stole the tune from a famous sort of cowboy movie, and one of which was rehashed of something I'd read before. And they thought they were great, and they went straight in the show. Tell people that now. Don't believe you. Straight after that, I got my first season at Butlins as children's comedian. There was a theatre company in 4 of the 6 Butlins camps, and each theatre company had a comedian, and I was cast as that person. 11 different shows a week, and we had 5 days to rehearse them.
And they would change?
The shows were the same each week, but we'd have shows number 1 and 2 were on a Monday.
Oh, I see.
Number 3 and 4 were on a Tuesday. So we got there on the Monday, knowing we were opening on the Saturday, and we had 5 days to rehearse all 11 shows. And I tell students that now, and they just look at me like, oh, God, really? He expects us to believe that? We had 5 days to rehearse 11 shows. And so for the next 3 weeks, we were performing 2 shows a day with a full dress rehearsal of both shows just before each show, because we hadn't had any time to rehearse it properly. Absolute bonkers. I worked with some brilliant people. I worked with some horrible people while I was there who just moaned all the time. But I also worked with some people who just went, what's the point of moaning? We got money, we got this, we got that. Let's get on with it. And we're in Pathelli.
And was Butlins still at that time where you would get lots of the sort of old school pros doing the rounds? So some of the old light entertainment acts that you must have watched.
Absolutely, yeah. I did 2 seasons at Butlins, and I did 1 in Jersey on Fort Regent on Jersey. And between those 3 seasons, I saw, people like Phil Cool and Duncan Norvell and Gary Wilmot and all those fantastic entertainers who were just coming through in the 80s. All of those people, got to see them all for free. But I also saw Bob Monkhouse, Ken Dodd, all those people who played Butlins every year because they felt they owed them something from the previous 20 years. And Ken Dodd did go on for 4.5 hours. The first hour of his show is about how long he's going to go on for. It was extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it.
Pete, what was the job when you left drama school that was perhaps the biggest or perceived as the most important first job?
Well, I did a lot of bits and pieces. I did a lot of travelling around in vans. What I didn't do was turn anything down. So in the very early days, my CV had a load of rubbish on it, but I had a CV. Whereas a lot of my contemporaries were going, oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I wouldn't tour in the back of a transit van, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, no, hang on a second. So I did that Petrushka the Puppet. And then the following summer, they called me and said, do you want to do old time music hall with us? We give you carte blanche to create a character. So I created the Reverend Alexander Worthy, and I sort of held the whole show together, as it were, as this bizarre Simon Callow style priest, which was great fun. But it was the first time somebody noticed, you worked for them this summer and they invited you back the following summer.
Absolutely.
And they noticed that the same companies were inviting me back. So I did 2 seasons for them and I did 2 seasons for Butlins, which kind of took, it wasn't for Butlins actually, it was for Jean Wren. But we worked at Butlins, which took up the whole of the first 2 years after I left drama college. And they were all for 2 companies. All those different 4 or 5 jobs I did were for 2 companies, and people started to notice. And started to go, oh, you get invited back, so you must be quite nice to get on with then. And I thought, okay, fair enough. If you say I'm nice, I'll believe you.
A lot of people will see Pete Gallagher synonymous with a lot of very, very respected musicals. What was the first big musical that you did?
The first big, beautiful musical came about 6 or 7 years after I left drama college. I've been doing loads of work, as I said, and then I got a call from my agent, who was brilliant and will remain nameless, to audition for a part of Ricky Valance, who sang a song called Tell Laura I Love Her in the 50s or 60s, if you remember. I went for the audition with my pre-prepared material, nothing to do with Ricky Valance, of course, to be told it wasn't Ricky Valance, it was Richie Valens, who sang La Bamba. And in fact, I wasn't there to audition for Richie Valens. I was there to audition for the part of the Big Bopper.
Right.
And so she'd not only got the character wrong, but she'd got the wrong version of the wrong character. So I went along not knowing what to expect. And the director, who is an absolutely brilliant man, Rob Bettinson, perilously close to genius. He's just superb. He knows exactly what to say and what to do at any given time. Rather beautifully, at the end of the audition, said, right, well, I'm not allowed to tell you whether you've got the part or not because you've only had one audition, and that would be deeply unprofessional of me. But if you choose to do anything for the next 12 months, you're an idiot. We'll be calling you next week.
Lovely.
And they called my agent and said they'd like to offer me the part of the Big Bopper. So I did the first ever UK tour of Buddy, which I think was the first time a show that was running in the West End was also out on tour. I think that's the first time it ever happened. And after 10 months on the road, they asked me if I wanted to swap and come into town. There was no A and B team about it. Don't think that's what it's like. You're both equally as important to the other as the other. There's nothing. The West End aren't the important ones, and the tour are not important. It's not like that at all. But we just wondered if you'd like to swap from one cast to the other. So I said yes, please. And I got there, and there was a card waiting for me, and in the card it said "Welcome to the A Team." But it was great. So I did 10 months on the road, and I think I did about another 10 months in the West End with Buddy playing the Bopper. Completely different show, of course, because on the road it was a family thing, and in the West End it was a job. So it felt like a totally different show. But great fun. And that was it, really. After that, I was offered every rock and roll musical that's ever been written. Yeah. And I did most of them, to be fair.
And what were they?
Leader of the Pack, the Rocky Horror Show, stuff like that was floating around at the time. I finally got away from it when I think Superstar was the break from it. It was about to open at the Lyceum, which had been closed for ages and had a full refurb done by people who are used to designing office blocks. That's why it's so square and beige when you get inside the backstage area. And yeah, they were putting on a revival. It was the first time Superstar had been seen in the West End for 20 odd years. And they needed a Caiaphas. And I had just done Fields of Ambrosia. So consequently, I had most of the year off that I thought I was going to be working for because we closed after 10 days. And I went along and auditioned, and they said, what a shame you can't hit bottom D, Mike. If you could, you'd be a great Caiaphas. And I said, I can hit bottom D, and who's Mike? And suddenly realised she was reading someone else's notes. So I went back in. I went back onto the stage, rather, did some more singing, and that was it. And then I found it was between me and Tony Hadley, I believe, and I got it, which chuffed me slightly. Yeah. But I do a mean gold at parties, so I'm getting my own back.
So tell me about being involved in Jesus Christ Superstar. So when did you first do it? Because obviously I know you did the arena tour much later. You'd done it. Yeah. You'd done it previously, because of course you keep coming back to this show. Yeah,
it was the Lyceum, the reopening of the Lyceum. We had a 12-month contract which included 10 weeks of rehearsal, so we had a 42-week run period, and then it extended for 6 months, and then it closed. Right. So we did, I think all told, we did about 16 months at the Lyceum, just before the Lion King went in there, obviously. It was extraordinary because Andrew threw everything at it. We had Mr. Napier designing the set, who, of course, not fresh, but some years earlier had done the world-famous Revolve in Les Miserables. We had Mr. Hershey doing the lights. And if you've got Napier and Hershey involved, you just go, oh my God, this is going to be the best show in the world. So it was set inside a Roman amphitheatre and lit with Hershey's very lights, which just hadn't been seen in the West End that much before. So it was all over the place. It had Mike Dixon as the MD, who of course is stunningly good. Superstar was the first show that ever had a synthesizer in the orchestra, and Andrew was very keen to do something similar. So it was the first show to ever have an iwi in the band.
What's an iwi?
An electronic wind instrument.
Right.
So you basically you blow it like a clarinet, but it is a synthesizer.
Where does that come out in the recordings? I'm just trying to think what it is.
I might be wrong, but I think that's...
that would make sense, because it's a bloody odd sounding thing, but I just assumed it was a synthesizer.
I think that's the iwi. It is a synthesizer, but it's a blown synthesizer.
When did you start to become a dad and a husband, and how did you juggle your career with all the responsibilities that come with being a father?
Yeah, it was tough. Funnily enough, it's remembered differently to how it happened. But what actually happened was I met my wife while I was doing Buddy. My wife while I was doing Buddy, and we got together and we were very happy and this, that, and the other. We kind of knew from the beginning that it was very serious, and we weren't going to do the restaurants and the cinemas thing. We were just going to go, can we just spend the rest of our lives together, please? Yes, here we go. As it turned out, it was the most beautiful and glorious 20 years, and at the end of which we had drifted apart so much, it was the right thing to do, to go our own way. And we're still great friends. I saw her on Tuesday. What's today? Thursday. I saw her on Tuesday. And we get on fantastically well. And then we had a spot of trouble conceiving. We had the problems that a lot of couples do. And then eventually our daughter Alice was born. And at that point, I decided not to tour anymore, because I thought, right, I don't want to miss her first steps and I don't want to miss her first words. I might, because I might be out doing a show in the West End if I'm lucky. But I decided not to tour. And I actually didn't tour for 15 years.
Wow.
I went away and did panto occasionally. So I disappeared for 4 or 5 weeks. But that was all. I didn't tour for a long time. But bizarrely, we spoke to Alice about it many years ago. And she remembers me going away for long periods of time. And that was the 4 or 5 weeks I'd go away to do panto. She remembers that like it was forever.
So if you had gone away for months, from a child's perception, almost like welcoming back a stranger in
Absolutely. So thank goodness I didn't go out on tour, because, she probably wouldn't have remembered me by the time I came home.
What did you do during those 15 years, to keep the wolf from the door, to provide for the family? What else were you doing?
Well, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've been very, very lucky. The biggest stroke of luck I've ever had is that I'm 6'7". I'm a freak. I'm very happy to accept that. Over 6'6", you're classified as a medical giant. That's what I am. And I also can sing, and have been described by various people as being one of the very few singers that they've met who can also act properly as well. So those things, as a 6'7" man, are not forgotten. There's a lot of wonderful actor-singers who are 5'11". There's not that many of us. These are other people's words. I'm not meaning to sound arrogant, but there's not that many people who are described as that who are 6'7". So basically, every time a bunch of producers and directors sits around a table and goes, what about somebody for, I don't know, Judd Fry? Someone will always go, what about Gallagher? Because I am of a category that isn't average, if you like. So because of that, I just kind of bounce from show to show to show to show. It really wasn't until Chitty Bang Bang was the first show I took because I needed a job, as opposed to because I wanted it. It was the very first show I took and went, I just have to work. I've been out of work for a few months now. So whenever that was the first time I hadn't been employed since I left drama college. But it's all because of my height. People remember me because of that.
You also had the unique opportunity of working with Lionel Bart on Quasimodo, the musical.
Didn't I just? Yes.
So, for those who don't know about shall we say how do I describe Quasimodo? The well-intended musical with a few lovely bits and pieces, but it was obviously quite a difficult process. Tell me about working on Quasimodo and working with the great Lionel Bart.
Do you know my big memory of working on Quasimodo isn't about Quasimodo at all. It's about my agent called me and said they've asked to see you for a film, some little French thing. And I said, when? Friday. I said, I can't do it Friday. We've got the workshop of Quasimodo on Friday. She said, well, you haven't started rehearsing yet. I said, I can't turn down Lionel Bart to go for a little French film. The little French film, in inverted commas,
go on,
was The Fifth Element, directed by Luc Besson, and that's all she remembered. Anyhow.
Good grief.
Anyhow, it was interesting. He was clearly near the end of the road, and he knew he was near the end of the road, and it was remarkable watching him walk around. He was pursued by this small young lad. I say small. He wasn't, of course, in the
I
same way.
mean, from your world, Pete, everybody is small.
That's true. Yes.
We are but insects crawling
What
on
can
the
I
planet's
say?
face.
What can I? But in the same way that car mechanics are always little men. I don't know why. I've got a little man who fixes my car. He's 6'8".
Yeah.
That's the little man who fixes my car. He would be pursued by this young chap who'd be scribbling constantly, and it was Lionel going, "Write this down." And there'd be a small boy writing notes down because he didn't write music.
No.
He just hummed it to someone that hummed. Is that a past participle? He ham it.
To hum.
Hom it.
One hums, yes.
Yes, what's the past? Let's invent
Hummed.
a past for it. Hem. He
Hummed.
hem it.
It must be hummed.
No, that's the least interesting of all the options, surely. He ham it. Anyhow.
Humidified.
Thank you very much. He did that. And that was his next song, taking shape on a pad with a young musical chap scribbling furiously. But I think I may have told you this. My favourite moment ever was when he told us it was about the punctuation.
Oh, I know this story, yes.
He said to us, the thing is, you're all getting it wrong. It's not, you're worrying about the words. It's not about the words. It's about the punctuation. You've got to see the punctuation. So the line actually goes, Quasimodo, boom, boom. Make, comma, if you are human, some hullabaloo, comma, man. And we were sitting there going, it's not about the punctuation, Lionel. It's about the fact you've rhymed human with hullabaloo, man. But I loved it. I absolutely loved him. And I had this wonderful bass thing to sing about, do you deny gypsy? One of those moments. And it was gorgeous. And I remember looking up we did it in the Soho Laundry, looking up and seeing Cameron McIntosh staring at me. And in my head, all I was doing was going, how do I turn this into an audition for Javert? How do I do it? So I was sweeping capes madly around me in the hopes that he'd go, do you know what? He'd be a smashing Javert. But there you go. Yes, it was great. It was lovely working with him. And he sent me a gargoyle afterwards as a little gift. I'm sure he sent one to everybody, which I still have on my shelf because it was from Lionel Bart. Which is
that's a
lovely,
wonderful thing.
and died shortly afterwards. So I have this lovely gargoyle's face, which was a prezi from Lionel.
I think it's time we whip your Fanny out again.
Oh, whip my Fanny as much as you want.
So the next song we've got from Pete's musical Fanny Hill, They're Like an Angel, and it's sung by Emily Davis. Tell me a little bit about the context of this particular song.
Okay, so this is very near the end of the piece. I'm tempted to say it's a spoiler, but most of the people know the story anyway. It's very near the end of the piece. Fanny has just discovered that the man she has been searching for several years, she thinks she has found out where he is. And this is her moment of going, I have felt you all these years by my side. I really hope tomorrow morning it turns out to be true and I can actually see you physically as well as feeling you in my heart.
Such a tiny flame, bravely hanging on, telling me to dare for a day in a way that I thought had maybe gone, offering forgiveness and delivering a while from the trials of the past. If the words remain unspoken, we can mend the lost and broken hearted. Guide my light, tell me in the darkest night, you were there like an angel beside me, still breathing warm and bright, ever to rely on. Fierce and proud, I dreamed and vowed I would find your hand, tell you that I understand.
Gosh, she has some pipes on her, doesn't she?
Doesn't she just? Yeah. And funnily enough, the lady who played Fanny for us, a wonderful actress called Victoria Serra, had actually lost her voice. When she came into the studio, she'd lost her voice completely, couldn't record the song. And Rob Doughton, the composer, said, I have this wonderful friend. I'll get her in next week. And I heard it and just went, wow, what a cracking voice that lady has. Yeah, terrific. And we've had loads of requests for the sheet music for that as well from ladies who want to do it in auditions.
So I'm going to change the tone a little bit because... being very, very British, whenever somebody has an enormous personal tragedy, our first instinct is to look to the floor and go, or better not mention that. And then, of course, nobody then learns how to deal with tragedy.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's quite well known that your wonderful daughter Alice passed away, and your response to it, I find deeply inspiring. I'm going to probably shut up now and say, would you mind just taking us through what happened and how you dealt with it?
Yeah, don't mind at all. 2014, she was out in South Africa. She was working in a place called the Human Dignity Centre, helping people with drug problems, and also teaching kids to swim, many of whom had never even been in the water before. Ironically, one of the reasons they didn't go in the water was because there's such a history of rip currents in the area. And they finished their 10-week post in South Africa, and they had 3 days of debriefing and winding down. And on the first of those days, 5 of them went into the sea for a swim, and they were all caught in a rip current. 3 of them escaped, and 2 of them didn't. And Alice was one of the 2 who didn't. The previous year, she'd been to Cambodia and taught English and what have you with a struggling school out there, and had done some terrific work, really good work. So a lot of people donated a lot of money, and with it, we have managed to go back to Cambodia. We've actually, do you know what? This is probably the most heartbreaking thing I'm going to say in the whole interview. We built them a classroom. 5,000 quid is what it cost to build and equip an entire new classroom. 5,000 quid. You can't get a second-hand car for that here.
People pay that on a telly.
Yeah. But I mean, we raised a lot more than that. We didn't really set out to raise anything, but people wanted to donate because she'd been doing so much for charity. So a lot of the money has already gone to her favourite causes. But her mum, my ex-wife, and our, in inverted commas, nephews, Joseph and Adam, as well as my son, Geordie, our son Geordie, have taken it upon themselves to organise the Alice Festival every year, the Beautiful Alice Festival, which is sort of regarded as the first DIY festival each summer. It's getting a lot of publicity because of that. It happened in a pub in the first year, and a couple of hundred people turned up, raised lots of money, which was lovely. My nephew Joseph works on The X Factor and Britain's Got Talent and all those kind of stuff as a rigger. So he manages to steal, just for the day, basically truck stages. And the acts who are coming along are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This will be the 4th year it's happened, and every year it's got bigger. And it happens in St Albans now. A wonderful lady in St Albans gives them huge fields for absolutely nothing. Stalls turn up from everywhere. There are now 2 live music areas. There's an indoor acoustic tent, and there's the outdoor kind of rock stage. There's bars, there's food from all around the world, there's all sorts of stalls, and it just buzzes for the whole day. It's fantastic. It's called the Beautiful Alice Festival. Look it up. It'll be happening June next year in St Albans.
I know you're such an optimist. I mean, you really are. I mean, you could walk into a theatre, and the roof could be falling in and rain pouring in, and you go, oh, look, open air. I mean, you always, your glass is always half full. What on earth do you do when you get that news?
Do you know what? It teaches you odd things. The one thing above everything else that myself and Susie, my ex-wife, the one thing we kept on saying is, isn't Facebook a brilliant thing? Thousands of people contacted us, just little tiny messages, thousands of them. It meant we didn't have to tell anyone about the funeral arrangements. We could just pop a little notice on there saying precisely who we wanted to come. We said, please, only the people who have seen her in the last year, only the people who would regard themselves as her friends. Don't be offended, but not Facebook friends, just people who knew her. Hundreds of people turned up. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. For the first month, for exactly a month, I went, you must remember, I've separated from my wife at this point. So she went to her mother's, and I just said, I want to be with you for the next few weeks. We spent Christmas and New Year at her mum's, and we got through the really painful period where you have to plan stuff. You have to plan a funeral. You have to wind up affairs. You have to do all sorts of things. So we did that together, and then I had to pull out of Panto because of that, but that was the least of my problems. And then when the beginning of January came, January the 5th or 6th or whatever, I had to go back to work because I had no money coming in. And so did Suze. So we just said, right, that's it. That period of 4 weeks we didn't lock ourselves away. We told people where we were, and if they wanted to come to us, they could. But it gave us 4 weeks of non-stop sanctuary. We could plan, we could cry, we could scream, we could shout, we could choose to eat or not to eat with no one shouting at us, you've got to eat your food or you're going to fall over. Sometimes you feel like it. Sometimes you're ravenous. Sometimes you absolutely don't want to ever look at another chip again as long as you live. But all of that stuff, and because it doesn't make sense, and that's the big thing. You stare up at the sky every night. You stare up at the same beautiful stars, and the moon is shining bright. And you stare up at them and you go, this doesn't make sense. It's not fair. Because of that, to have a little sanctuary is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And it didn't matter that we were separated as a couple. We lay there every night watching something. I say mindless in the most respectful way, something not connected to anything. So we'd watch a David Attenborough or something, and we'd both drift off to sleep. And we'd wake up in the morning and we'd have to get on with it again. We had separated, but it didn't matter because the common bond was we need to get through this. Then at the end of that period, and I've said this a lot, and I know it sounds harsh, I don't mean it to, but it's the truth. You have two choices. You either throw yourself under a train or you carry on. And as long as you get through that first bit where nothing makes sense, or, alternatively, throwing yourself under a train would make as much sense as carrying on in that initial bit. As long as you get through that initial period with some support, it doesn't matter who it's from, by the time you get to the end of it, you go, right, I now have the choice. And you do. It is a genuine choice. You either give up and you shrivel, or this isn't meant to sound offensive at all. I apologise for anyone it affects, but throwing yourself under a train is just a way I phrase it, and apologies if it upsets anyone. But you either do something awful like that to yourself, or you go, well, I have to carry on. So what's the point of carrying on without any dignity, without any strength, without any pride? I may as well carry on the best way I can and see how it feels. And the most amazing thing is that people crawl out of the woodwork. They really do. And I was really shocked. The amount of people I thought were friends who didn't get in touch because, in inverted commas, I didn't know what to say. Nothing's that hurtful. I didn't know what to say. Really? That's odd, because my friends did. My friends knew exactly what to say.
Yeah.
So you suddenly realise who your friends actually are, because they're there for you. The composer of Fanny Hill, Rob Doughton, was the only person who phoned me like every day. What are you doing? How are you? Why aren't we having a pint? Let's meet up. We ended up only actually meeting up, I think, once in those first few weeks. But it was because he kept saying, I'm in Panto the other side of you. When I'm driving home, I'm pretty much passing the end of your road. Come and have a pint with me. And we went and had a pint. Victoria Serra, another lady I've mentioned, she came round to my place shortly after that period of time. And I can remember after about an hour or two of saying to her, sorry, I didn't intend to talk about Alice all night. And she said to me, I intended that. That's all I wanted, was for you to get it off your chest, because I could tell you were all screwed up about something. And that's the important thing, is just to keep talking about it and to go, I've made the choice. I've made the choice to carry on. So now let's make the best of it. And if you can, be there for other people who are going through the same thing. And I have had emails and phone calls from people who say, I don't know how to do that. I got one a couple of weeks ago from a good friend of mine who said, my girlfriend doesn't know how to get through this. You don't even know her, but are there any words you could offer her? So I said, yeah. And I said what I said. And I said, I hope that helps. And if it doesn't, you learn the big lesson, which is that everyone has to get through everything their own way. But at the end of the day, there are only so many patterns of behaviour you can adopt. But because I got through it that way, if someone else gets through it in a totally different way, it doesn't make either one of us right or wrong. And in fact, sometimes my ex-wife Susie, who's coping sensationally well and has thrown herself into making sure that it never happens to anyone again by achieving some form of justice, because the circumstances weren't good.
So take us through those circumstances for people that don't know the full story.
Well, the circumstances are that she was out there with a company who it won't do neither me or you any harm at all for me to name them because they've been in every newspaper in the country through us, a company called Latitude. She was volunteering services overseas are the government department that runs this, the VSO. And underneath the VSO is a company called ICS. And ICS are an umbrella that looks at international citizenship services, that looks after several companies who provide volunteers abroad. Alice was with one of those. She was with Latitude. And on that horrific day, they were essentially joined / led into the sea for a swim by the very chap who should have done a risk assessment on the beach and should have discovered that no one under any circumstances should go swimming in that sea. And that should have also been pretty obvious by the fact that none of the locals ever swam in the sea because it was just too dangerous. So all we said was, I know they were over 18, but the fact of the matter is you've got a dirty, great big government stamp on your company. It says Latitude, part of ICS, looked after by VSO. You have the British government stamp, and that's why kids trust you. And if they're going to come out with you, you do not have the right to do something that endangers them, regardless of the fact that anyone that likes can say they were over 18, they should have done their own research. No, if you're taken into the home of the Prime Minister, you expect the people in the Prime Minister's home to know what goes on in that house. So they're with the country manager, and the country manager should have known, and he didn't. And so we have fought for justice ever since. Because Latitude have carried on as though nothing happened, as though they didn't do anything wrong. And the coroner disagreed, and he set them a list of things they had to change or shut the company down. The people involved have now all surprisingly left the company without anybody telling us. They've all gone. They've lost the backing of the government department now. VSO have removed their financial backing. So they're operating as a private company and pretty much denying it ever happened. After 2 years, we found out when we did our investigating that we're actually not entitled to any form of financial compensation. We didn't want any, but we wanted to make sure that people didn't think we were just in it for the money. But actually, because the girls were so young, the two girls who were lost were so young, they had no sort of projected loss of earnings, and that's all you can sue for in this country. So we are taking them to court, as it were, and all we're asking for is for them to admit liability. And should they ask how much money we want, we're going to say it doesn't matter. No one cares. And any money they give us is going to go straight into a charity to look after people and make sure it never happens again. It's never going to be or has been about any compensation. It's about them saying, we shouldn't have let this happen, which they haven't done for 3 years.
You really are only after justice.
Absolutely. And if they were to offer us, as we've said 100 times, if they were to offer us £1 million, we'd say, thank you very much. Take that away, someone. Set up a charity for young people volunteering abroad. Make sure they're all safety water trained. Do not give a penny of it to us. Now, shut up and tell us you're sorry. Otherwise, that money's meaningless.
Yeah.
And that's all we want. We just want them to admit liability because they have covered up their involvement in our daughters' deaths.
Are there any professional services that you use that you found at all useful that I can pop on the Show People show notes in case people are going through these things, or did you just cope with it just by yourself?
Well, we took refuge in each other, obviously. The one thing, the reason I was telling you all that just now is because the one thing that has kept us focused and going is the fact that we had that target. So from a self-help point of view, I would say if you have a target, if you have a reason to know that when you reach a certain place, you will feel like you've achieved something, that will help get you through it.
Yeah.
From a personal point of view, probably after about 2 or 3 months, which is a thing that confuses people quite a lot. They don't realize how slowly it can hit them. after 2 or 3 months, I found myself regularly watching the lunchtime news in my flat, realising I hadn't moved since I got up in the morning. So I'd get up at 9 or 9:30, and at 1:30 I'd still be sat in the same chair, hadn't made myself a cup of tea, hadn't done anything. And at that point I thought, so I don't feel depressed, I certainly don't want to do anything drastic, but I do feel like I haven't got any life inside me. So I went and saw the doctor, and the doctor asked me about antidepressants. I said, I'm not really bothered about antidepressants, but they also recommended me for counselling. And I have to say, the counselling at the St. Christopher's Hospice in Bromley, the counsellor was astonishing. He was wonderful. I had 6 or so sessions with him, and every week I felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. He was just brilliant.
We could talk about this all afternoon. All I can say is there will be links on the show notes all about the Alice Festival.
Thank you.
Do you also keep an eye out for Pete's Twitter, as I believe it's on Alice's birthday? You always do a toast and a drink for Alice as well.
Well, it's, we lost her on December the 4th, and a few days later she was meant to be flying back from South Africa. And on that day, we do a little toast. And the first year we did it, we just told people 6 o'clock in the morning she was meant to be arriving, and she drank Bloody Marys. So we all poured ourselves a Bloody Mary at 6 o'clock in the morning, and hundreds of photographs of people from all around the world came through. Some at 6 o'clock, others at 9, just with the legend, shit, slept in, sorry, this is coffee, hope it'll do. Just fantastic. Hundreds. And since then, I've done it every year, and I get photos back from people every year. I love the really specific ones. I love the ones I get from a truck driver who's just got a travel mug of coffee in his hand, and he's lifting it up, taking a selfie of himself. I'm like, who's steering? What's going on? And it just goes, cheers, Alice. And I'm like, brilliant. That's wonderful. A truck driver in Bolton doing this fantastic thing. Well, I love it.
I just, as ever, your creativity astonishes me, and yeah, what an extraordinary story. Well, now on to something completely different, and that is a show people first. That's right, I'm delighted to introduce you to our very first sponsor of the Show People podcast, and that's My Accountants, and indeed Arian Productions Accountants, and they have very generously sponsored this episode. Alex Dyer and his wonderful team at Theatrical will be giving you entertainment financial advice each episode. So please do check them out, and I hope you enjoy Alex's first appearance on the show.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatrical. We're a friendly team of accountants who work with clients in the entertainment industry. And it's our mission to make tax simple. We offer a no jargon, simple approach with no hidden fees. Here's my tax tip of the week. You might be wondering what the benefit of having an accountant is, and if you should actually get one. As I say to everyone that I chat to, you don't have to have an accountant, but for the little that it costs, getting one might just be the best thing you ever do. As well as taking away the stress of completing the dreaded online tax return form, it's our job to keep you on track and make sure you don't pay any more tax than you need to. Most importantly, we'll advise you what expenses you can and cannot claim. Quite often, people completely miss or haven't even thought of certain expenses when completing their own tax return, and then they end up paying far too much tax. Such simple costs get missed, such as using your home as an office or even claiming for your mobile phone bill. We've seen some real horror stories in our time, and we are keen to fix them. We are proud and privileged to be the first sponsors of the Show People podcast, which we love to listen to. If you'd like to chat with us or to join us as a client, you can contact us via our website, which is www.theatrecounts.co.uk, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Theatrecounts. If you're a new client to us, we'll even give you a £50 discount off your first year fee. Just quote the Show People podcast.
So let's talk a little bit about more recent times. Mm-hmm. Now, you are responsible for bringing the very first musical to Britain's Got Talent.
Yes, we did that. Yes.
So for anybody that doesn't know, do refresh people's minds, those who do watch the show, and they'll go, oh, it's that bloke.
Yeah,
tell us about
it's
it.
That bloke. So I got a call from the guy I was writing bits and pieces with, Danny Davis, who's a lovely chap. We've written a show together called Face to Face, which is the story of the surgeon, Mr. Treves, and Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, who's wrongly called John in everything you ever read. We'd worked together before. We were working on bits and pieces, and he said, I've been speaking to Britain's Got Talent about going on to that, and this, that, and the other. And I said, no, I'm really not interested, Danny, but thank you. I don't want to appear on Britain's Got Talent. Anyway, they then called back and said, well, how about you do this? And so Danny called me. This went on for weeks. What was really interesting is that they kept on saying, no, we're not interested. Thank you, goodbye. And then they'd phone back 2 days later and go, what we would be interested in. So eventually I said to Dan, well, look, they're obviously keen to have another angle on something. So between us, we came up with this idea of offering them a musical as the contestant. So I was never going to perform on Britain's Got Talent. Danny's a composer anyway, rather than a performer. So we would cast and we'd perform a song from the show. Maybe me and Dan would introduce it, but that's all. And if it got through, the following week, you get another song from the show. And if it got through, the following week, you get another. And they really liked the idea. So they went for it. They backed down about 3 times, but ended up always going back to it and saying, yeah, let's do it. Then they asked us to audition, and I just said, no, I'm not going to put a cast of 16 people together, rehearse them for a week in some strange place and get the choreographer in and all the rest of it just for you to go, no, I don't think it's for us, really. I said, see us at the London Palladium. If you want to edit us out of the programme, then just edit us. But at least do us the honour of saying, you know how much work we've put in, so see us at that stage. So they said, okay. And we noticed at the Palladium, when we had our little rehearsal slot, the auditorium filled up with TV execs. All of whom had obviously gone,
they did.
Simon's in later. Oh my God, we've said these people can come straight through to this round. And halfway through the song, they just all patted each other on the back and walked out. So we obviously got through. And then, we appeared on what was called the live quarterfinals. And we got 4 yeses from the judges who said they were desperate to hear more. And so we came back in the semi-finals. We'd written a song especially for the semi-finals, which was from the musical that we were pushing, obviously, but we'd tailored this song and just went, this will be superb. They asked us not to do it. They asked us to do another song that they'd heard, and they asked us to do it in a certain way. So we said, okay, and we did it. And 2 people buzzed, and Simon said he didn't like the song and he didn't like the way we'd done it. At which point, I'm there on stage defending my cast, and I have the choice. I either go, well, you chose the song and you chose the style, or I shut up and take it with dignity. So that's what we did. We took it with dignity because you can't fight that machine. Interestingly, shortly afterwards, Simon Cowell's musical, I Can't Sing, opened at the London Palladium.
Yes.
So one would hope that in some small way, he went, well, do you know what? If I'm going to put money into a musical, it may as well be mine.
Talking about more recent things, I know you recently did Shock Treatment, for example, at the King's Head. The infamous Rocky Horror Picture Show 2, I suppose it would be fair to call it. What are you working on now?
Now is interesting. I've just done, if I may tell you, I don't know if you're aware, I've just done a thing that's been loitering for 50 years and has never happened. So I've just written the first draft of a script for a teenage opera, which people of a certain age will know as a pop song called Grocer Jack. But it wasn't called Grocer Jack, it was called Excerpt from a Teenage Opera. And the teenage opera never happened. That was 1967. So this year, 2017, 50 years on, we finally put it on a stage. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I had the backing of John Bromwich and everyone at the Youth Music Theatre UK. I had their backing. They produced the workshop, as it were. We ran for a week, just under a week, at a theatre in Bracknell. And it was a great start. I think that'll resurface in a couple of years in a different format. But it was lovely. We got the composer over from the States, got the chap who sang the #1 hit single, Keith West, he came in as well. It was really good. Got half the band together who played on the 1967 single.
Wonderful.
Which was brilliant. Clem Catini was there, the drummer who has played on more #1 hit singles than anyone else in history. Just brilliant to see Clem. I did the Rocky Horror Show with Clem, of course, years ago. So that was that. I'm about to start Panto rehearsal in a couple of weeks, and in the middle of which I've moved house, which has taken up the last month or so. I've got 2 projects I want to write. and I've just pitched another show to YMT, who've said yes, maybe for next summer.
So I'm going to strand you now, Pete, on tour.
Mm-hmm.
You end up in Whitley Bay, away from all civilization and humanity.
Best chips in town.
I'm going to ask you what your favourite things are.
Okay.
But you do get a copy of the Bible, and you do get the complete works of William Shakespeare. Pete Gallagher, what would be the album that you would have in your dressing room at Whitley Bay?
Oh, this is going to tell you far too much about me. The album I would have is one you probably have never heard of, called Formica Blues by Mono. The big track off it, Life in Mono, you probably would have heard, which is quite possibly my favourite song of all time. But the album is beautiful. It's got Slimsy a Girl on it and Life in Mono and all sorts of lovely stuff. Formica Blues by Mono.
And what would be the book?
See, that's a toughie, isn't it? Because my favourite book, which probably makes me a terrible cliche, is probably To Kill a Mockingbird. But my favourite author in a bizarre way is probably Edgar Allan Poe. So I'd be tempted.
The Raven and things like that.
Yeah. I preferred his stories to his poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Raven, everybody knows the quote, but it's a poem, but a beautiful poem at that. I'd probably take some Poe, because he wrote it on so many different levels, and he had such a bizarre mind that it's fascinating. You read little lines every now and then. If you reread something, you go, I didn't notice that before.
And what would be the play?
The play's an interesting thing, isn't it?
The play is the thing.
The play is the thing, and in fact, that would probably be the play. And I bore myself by saying to students, "It is the finest ink ever placed on paper." Hamlet's just the be-all and end-all.
But you already get Hamlet.
But it's already there. So the plays, so anything I've seen recently, Moonlight and Magnolias is beautiful, as I said, great fun to read, as well as be in. I adored, controversially, The Nether. Oh my goodness me.
The Nether was extraordinary.
It was an absolutely extraordinary piece of theatre, wasn't it? Absolutely loved that.
What would be the musical?
Probably my favourite musical, because I just think it's perfect, is Guys and Dolls.
It's a perfect book.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The characters are stunning. The plot is reasonable. I don't mean reasonable in a nasty way, but I mean it's there. Some musicals have no plot. Guys and Dolls at least has some plot.
Yeah.
The humour is to die for. It's just gorgeous. Just lines like, first they closed down my crap game, then they opened my veins. Those beautiful lines are gold dust. I adore it. And the music, of course, is astonishing.
And what would be your luxury item?
Oh, my luxury item would be halloumi cheese.
Halloumi cheese?
Yes, please.
You can have a raft full of halloumi cheese. That's fine.
Thank you.
Well, it's time for my favourite and our regular Show People challenge, which is Funny 5 Minutes.
Oh, right.
Have you been looking forward to this?
Well, yeah, I listened to Kim Ismay.
Yes.
I listened to the questions you were firing at her, and all I could think was, does he ask the same questions every week? He can't, surely, because otherwise people would prepare themselves. So
I had a few every. I take some out, I put some in.
Okay.
Some people send me stuff on Twitter, so please, if you do want to, if there's a particular silly question you'd like me to ask, do just tweet me, and I will just include it in my document that I have in front of me at the moment.
Marvellous.
You are allowed 3 passes.
Oh, okay.
Use them wisely, as if you've listened to Kim Ismay's, you never know what I might ask.
Right.
3 passes are allowed. You have to answer as many questions as possible within 5 minutes. Pete Gallagher, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. Pete Gallagher, if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
Ability to move, teletransportation, whatever that's called.
What is the worst practical joke that has ever been played on you?
Somebody put food poisoning type stuff in my food and I pooed myself on stage. Don't laugh at me.
It's a horrible thing. What's the best gift you've ever given?
I've ever given would probably be my dad's 90th birthday, year before last. The Queen had just struck a coin. Didn't mention her name. It just said 90 glorious years. So I gave that to my dad last year.
If someone narrated your life, who would it be?
Martin Clunes.
What's your favourite television show right now?
Oh, right now it's I can only think of old things right now. My favourite television show is probably Broad City.
Very, very good. Tell me a joke immediately.
What do you call a man who purports to be intelligent but actually is deaf?
I don't know. That's very much a visual joke. What's the lie about you that you've always wanted to clear up?
Oh, heavens, that's a good one. What is the lie about me that I've always wanted to clear up? I was once accused of having an affair with someone whilst I was married, and I not only didn't know the person, but I also wasn't married.
What's the strangest thing you've ever had in your mouth?
Unfortunately, nothing incredibly strange because I've been vegetarian for 40 years, but missing out the obvious jokes. I have what have I eaten that's exciting? I don't know. Pass. Yes, sorry.
Oh, do you recognise that sound? What would your last meal be?
Halloumi and red currant jelly.
What was the last lie you told?
Halloumi and red currant jelly.
If you had to dive into a swimming pool full of something, what would it be?
Custard.
What's the most delicious thing you can cook?
That I can cook is corn and mushroom pie.
Sounds hideous. How many pairs of shoes do you own?
Oh God, I am Imelda Marcos. Probably about 30.
If you wrote an autobiography, what would it be called?
Lanky Boy Got Lucky.
Where's the strangest place you've ever had a wee?
In a coffee cup in between two train carriages.
What's the best gift you've ever received?
Oh, my daughter.
Oh, hang on. Who was your teenage crush?
Susie Quattro.
Everyone says Susie Quattro.
God, do they really?
Well, your generation does, yes.
Oh, yeah, loved her. I can.
Cats or dogs?
Cats, obviously.
Correct answer. What are the best kind of pants?
Do you mean what do I wear, or what are the best kind of pants?
Well, that's entirely up to you.
Oh.
Take that how you so wish.
Lacy, very, very thin and tiny, obviously.
I mean, you are the only person that's interpreted that the other way around. Most people say what they wear. But no, Pete Gallagher likes lacy pants. Well, sadly, that is all the time that we have left. This is essentially, I mean, the only thing that's different about doing this with you now is usually it involves a pub, lots of red wine.
Yeah.
So maybe we should do that after this. Pete, thank you so much for coming onto the show. Please, my invisible audience, go mad, go ballistic for the wonderful Mr. Pete Gallagher. Thank you for coming on.
My absolute pleasure.
So, tell me, how can people keep up to date with all that you're up to?
Well, I tend to post everything on Facebook, so just jump on Facebook. I'm on there as Pete Gallagher. I'm on Twitter as Pete Gallagher1. I will put all the information on there, everything that's happening. I promote all my shows and tell everyone where I am.
Do give Pete a follow. He's always witty and always got something interesting to say. And of course, all of the things that we've discussed on the show, there will be links in the Show People podcast show notes. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. If you love the podcast or you can support the work we do, please buy merchandise, send us donations and help us do more for theatre makers. You can do that by visiting www.arianproductions.com/showpeople. You can also leave us an iTunes review, as that really helps. And make sure you check out our sponsors, Theatrecounts, at www.theatrecounts.co.uk and see how they can save you money. And lastly, if you have any comments, ideas, things you want to see on the show, people you want me to get on the show, you can reach me on Twitter at Andrew Keats. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com or like the Show People Facebook page, where you can also join the Show People discussion forum and chat about anything that we've raised on the show. And that's at facebook.com/showpeoplepodcast. Thank you very much for listening. And remember, just be better.
Will you stop acting like a schoolgirl having her first period and sit the fuck down?